The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here right now. In the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow, I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we talked about how the Israelites found themselves under the oppression of the Midianites and the Amalekites after sinning once again. And when they cried out for help, the Lord ended up sending this guy named Gideon. And I like Gideon. I like that he was very real. I like that he had an honest assessment of himself. And he's like, I'm weak. My tribe is weak. Like, you gonna use me? Because the Lord spoke to Gideon and told him, you are a mighty warrior, and I'm going to rescue the Israelites using you. And Gideon said things that a lot of people would clutch their pearls today when they think about, like, oh my gosh, how could you ask the Lord such questions and whatever? But he was honest about the disappointment that he faced in life. He asked a very real question. If you're with us, if you're with me, why are all of these horrible things happening to me? Why are all of these horrible things happening to my people? Why am I threshing wheat on the bottom of a wine press? That don't even make sense. I'd heard about you. I know what they're saying about you. They say great things, and you did this, and you did that, and you rescued us from slavery. But look at us now. We're back in slavery. So how do I know for real that you with me? Gideon asked the Lord to prove himself a number of times, and every time the Lord did, he proved himself to Gideon, and he told him, he said, yeah, I'm going to use you, and we're going to make this thing happen. So Gideon was wrapped in the spirit of the Lord. He was empowered by the spirit of the Lord, and he summoned all of these warriors from various tribes of Israel. And then as they were preparing to go and face the Midianites, the Lord did a quick census, and he said, Gideon, you have too many. You have too many warriors. And at that point, as I mentioned in the last episode, I imagine that Gideon was like, run that back. You said too many. How are we going to have too many of anything against these guys? Like, they describe the camels of these Midianites as like locusts, and they just covered the hillside. It was so many of them. Like, there was an innumerable amount of warriors that they were up against. I could just imagine the look on Gideon's face, but the Lord told him, he's like, yeah, you have too many. If I let you go out there and fight with all of these warriors, the Israelites gonna start smelling themselves, and they're gonna think that they won by their own strength. Nah, no can do. Let them know that whoever's nervous or whoever is scared can go home. No judgment. They can just turn and go back home. Gideon made the announcement, and 22,000 warriors turned around and went home. Gideon was left with 10,000. Can you imagine that? More than 2/3 of your troops turned around and went home because they realized, you know what, not really interested in going into this battle after all. 10,000 were about that life. They like, nah, I'm good. We ready. So after the 10,000 were left, the Lord told Gideon, he said, you still have too many. What? Come on, Lord, you being for real right now? And the Lord's like, yeah, you still got too many. So here's what we're going to do. Lead these guys to the water. Lead them to the spring so they can get a drink of water. And pay attention, okay? Those who cup their hands and scoop out the water and drink from their hands, those are the ones that you're going to keep. The ones who drop to their knees and put their face in the stream to drink, send those guys home. So Gideon, he led the troops to the spring, and he just chilling in the cut. He just watching. I imagine he's watching very attentively. And the more guys that he sees falling on their knees and drinking straight from the stream, I imagine his gut was like, ah, nah, not that. Look at the muscles on this guy. We needed him, and he's just assessing the number of guys that he knows he's about to have to send home. So after everybody had their fill of water, only 300 of them actually cupped the water in their hands and drank. These guys had a posture where they could still meet their need for water, but also keep their head on a swivel and pay attention to what was going on around them. Gideon started with 32,000. 22,000 left because they were scared. He was left with 10,000. The Lord said, still too many. And now he has 300. And now that he has 300, the Lord's like, yeah, that's more like it. Later on that night, the Lord spoke to Gideon and he said, I need you to go down to the Midianite camp and listen, because you're going to hear something and you're going to be ready to attack. But I need you to go and I need you to put your ear to the ground and listen to what's being said. And if you're scared, that's cool. Take your servant Purah to go with you. The next thing we know, Gideon and Purah are on their way down to the Midianite camp. Gideon crept up and he's ear hustling. And he heard this one guy talking to another guy. And he said, man, I had this dream. And in the dream, I saw this loaf of barley bread. Out of nowhere, it just started tumbling through our camp. And it hit this tent and then it turned it over and knocked it flat. So the other guy was like, yo, man, that could only mean one thing. You know that Israelite dude, Gideon? Joash's son. And the guy's like, yeah, I know who that is. And then he said, God has given him what it takes to defeat us, man. He about to roll through here, flip this camp upside down. When Gideon heard the enemies having this conversation, he worshiped the Lord. He ran back to the Israelite camps and he shouted, get up, we got to go. It's time. It's time to go get this victory. So Gideon took his 300 and he divided them into 3 different groups. And then they approached the enemy camp. And when the 300 blew their horns, the Lord caused the Midianites to start fighting each other. It was just utter chaos. And those who weren't casualties actually started taking off running. So Gideon sent for some more warriors to come and be reinforcements. And they were whooping up on the Midianites and all of their allies. Gideon had a little run-in with the Ephraimites because they were in their feelings about the fact that Gideon didn't call for them from the very beginning, because they wanted, to be able to have credit for the victory. They wanted to be able to puff their chest out like, yeah, we helped, and Gideon pacified them and told them what they needed to hear. And then he kept on minding his business. He took his 300 and he kept chasing the enemy because he like, man, y'all over here worried about clout and I'm worried about victory. So Gideon took the 300. They kept on chasing the enemies and they were exhausted and they were hungry. Gideon asked the leaders of this town called Succoth and also another town called Peniel for food so that he could feed his men and, help get them a little bit of strength so they could continue with this fight. And the leaders of both Succoth and Peniel wanted them to catch the Midianite kings. They're like, yeah, you catch these kings and then we'll break some bread for you. Gideon was like, that don't even make sense, but it's cool. Like, whatever, you keep your bread. I'm going to be back, though. Gideon ended up capturing the Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, and he went back to the town of Succoth, and he whooped these leaders with these briars and thorns, and he went to Peniel and he tore down their tower. Then Gideon addressed the Midianite kings because these kings actually ended up assassinating his biological brothers, and Gideon was like, man, I ain't want to have to take you out, but because you took my brothers out, like I have to. And Gideon was standing with one of his sons. He had 70, okay? But he was standing with one of his sons and he told his son, who was pretty young, he's like, yo, draw your sword and take these dudes out. And the son, like, he's scared, he's young. He didn't do it. He didn't draw his sword. And then the king's talking noise. They're like, no, you be a man, you do it yourself. You want it done. And he's like, bet. And he did. He took out the Midianite kings, and the Israelites had this great victory because the Lord used Gideon. So the Israelites went to Gideon and they're like, yo, man, thank you. We just, man, and they started worshiping Gideon, and they're like, you're going to be our ruler, and your son, your grandson, like they're going to be our rulers. And Gideon's like, hold up, miss me with all that. Like, you pass. I'm not gonna be your leader. I'm not gonna be your ruler. My son's not gonna be your ruler. My grandson, nah, none of that. Like, the Lord is our ruler. Period. Gideon stood 10 toes down on that. Like, no, I'm not trying to be put on a pedestal. Gideon recognized that it wasn't by his own strength or power that they were victorious, but he recognized that it was by the rulership of the Lord. And that is a problem that a lot of people run into, is they're willing to accept all of the praise that people give. It's very dangerous when we allow our heads to get swollen, when other people pat us on the back and celebrate victory with us and celebrate victory through us, because God isn't done. He's not done using people. He's not done using us. There are still battles to be fought, so to speak. And he still wraps us with his Holy Spirit and empowers us to partner with his vision and making things happen. But we have to guard ourselves against pride, and to be able to stand in the same wisdom that Gideon did, where he said, no, I will not be your ruler. You don't need a ruler. You have a ruler. The Lord is our ruler. And I admire Gideon for that. But we will stop here for now, and we'll pick up and seeing what happens with the Israelites in our next episode, if the Lord blesses me to record another one. Please, if you are enjoying these episodes, like, share, subscribe, leave me a comment. Would somebody please leave me a comment? I really want to hear from you. I value you and I deeply appreciate your support. I'll chat with you next time. Until then, bye for now.